You have undoubtedly heard this surname more than once. The Rothschilds are a true financial dynasty that has played a significant role in the global economy for more than 2 centuries. During the Napoleonic Wars, they became not just bankers, but a sort of shadow ministers of finance. And as Nathan Mayer Rothschild once said, "Give me control of a nation's money, and I care not who makes its laws." Shortly after the Battle of Waterloo, Nathaniel Rothschild, one of Mayer's sons, managed to obtain information about England's victory before anyone else. He used it for a significant financial gain, secretly buying and selling bonds, which ultimately led to the considerable enrichment of his family and even greater control over European finances. According to various estimates, he earned between £20 and £135 million sterling. What if information truly governs the world? The Rothschilds knew how to use it for colossal gains. Now, let us move to the United States at the end of the 19th century to see new financial titans enter the game. J.P. Morgan was a man who literally embodied American capitalism at the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th centuries. His bank, founded in the year 1871, played a key role in shaping the modern financial system of the United States. John Morgan helped create giants such as General Electric and U.S. Steel and was actively involved in saving the American economy during panics and depressions. There are numerous conspiracy theories suggesting that central banks, like the Federal Reserve System of the United States and the European Central Bank, operate behind the scenes in controlling the global economy. One of the most famous theories is that these banks are controlled by a small group of influential families who set global financial rules and standards. According to one theory, the Federal Reserve System was established as the result of a secret meeting in 1910 on Jekyll Island, attended by leading American bankers, including representatives of John Morgan and the Rockefellers. Participants in this meeting allegedly devised a system that allows control over the money supply and economic cycles of the USA, and hence influence the global economy. Next, let's look back at a time when influence moved from the banking halls to the streets of American cities. Brooklyn, on the 17th of January in the year 1899. On this day, Alphonse Gabriel Capone was born into a family of poor Italian immigrants. In his childhood and teenage years, Al Capone was a typical troubled youth. A turning point came with his move to Chicago in 1920. The city was mired in corruption, crime, and alcohol. Exactly what Al Capone needed to build his empire. Starting to work with gangster Johnny Torrio, Al Capone quickly understood that there could be only one leader here. After Torrio exited the game, Capone took control of everything. During the Prohibition era, he created an extensive network of speakeasies and distilleries. Smuggling alcohol became the main source of income for his organization. How much do you think Al Capone earned? At the peak of his power, he made up to $100 million a year. Imagine in the 1920s, this amount was simply astronomical. In today's money, that's about $1.5 billion. It was enough to buy whole neighborhoods of Chicago and bring them under his control. He understood perfectly well that for his empire to thrive, the massive flow of dirty money needed to be legalized somehow. To this end, he created an entire network of legal businesses, which included restaurants, shops, and even nightclubs. The expression money laundering originated precisely because of this gangster. In addition to all his lawful businesses, he established a network of cheap laundries. That's where this famous phrase came from. To attract customers, Capone used the opportunities of new media, radio and newspapers. In those years, newspapers, magazines and radio were the primary sources of information, and entrepreneurs quickly began to use them to promote their services. Thanks to his active media presence, Capone managed to create an image of a defender of the working class's interests, which helped him gain popularity among the public despite his criminal activities. Al Capone realized that he needed to control more than just the streets of Chicago. Political support became a necessary element of his empire. It's not surprising that it quickly became time to expand his circle of friends. One of the most interesting examples here is Chicago Mayor William Hale Thompson. They say that Al Capone had such an influence on Thompson that elections were often held under the gangster's guidance. Rumors circulated more than once that Al Capone could essentially pressure the mayor into making decisions that suited him. The police were not left out. Bought police officers helped Capone maintain control over the city, preventing arrests and uncovering the boss's crimes. According to some reports, up to 50% of the police in Chicago could be hired as informants or guards for Capone. Imagine how far a crime boss can go when even judges received threats from him. Here's one of the most famous stories. To a judge who refused to turn a blind eye to Capone's criminal activities, he sent a toy-sized coffin with a note saying, "Your time is running out." Very quickly, the judge realized it was better not to tempt fate. But of course, no rain lasts forever. In 1931, Al Capone was finally arrested. Not for murder or smuggling, but for tax evasion. It's hard to believe, but tax fraud became his Achilles heel. Capone was sentenced to 11 years in prison and sent to the infamous Alcatraz. But the Mafia didn't just take control of cities. Its influence reached all the way into the highest levels of US politics. And when we talk about the Mafia, the famous Cosa Nostra immediately comes to mind. But do you know how much they influenced US politics? One of the most well-known examples is the connection between John Kennedy and the Mafia. There is evidence that Sam Giancana, a Mafia boss in Chicago, assisted Kennedy in his presidential campaign in the 1960s, securing votes in key states. In return, the Mafia expected protection of their interests from possible government crackdown. Such meetings and agreements lead to the conclusion that the line between the world of crime and politics is much thinner than it seems. If the Mafia could influence presidential elections, then consider the drug lords who controlled entire countries. Meet Pablo Escobar. In the 1980s, Escobar was one of the wealthiest people in the world thanks to his cocaine business. So, let's start from the beginning. Let's travel to the small Colombian town of Rio Negro, where Pablo Emilio Escobar was born on December 1st, 1949. He grew up in a poor family where his mother was a teacher and his father a farmer. Yet, Pablo was always ambitious. And in his teenage years, he began his criminal career with petty theft and selling stolen goods. Ready to learn how much this real king of the criminal world earned? At the peak of his criminal activities in the 1980s, Escobar was making up to $500 million a week. Thanks to such incredible profits, his fortune was estimated to be $30 billion. Imagine, his wealth was so vast that Escobar literally did not know where to put the money. The surplus of cash became such a problem that, according to his brother Roberto, they would write off up to $2 billion monthly due to rodents destroying the bills. The Medellin cartel, Escobar's empire, was so large and influential that it controlled up to 80% of the global cocaine market. However, Pablo Escobar was not just a drug lord. He was the shadow ruler of Colombia. Escobar used his immense wealth and influence to bribe politicians, judges, and even the police. At one point, his power was so great that he offered to pay the entire national debt of Colombia, amounting to $20 billion, to avoid extradition to the United States. He understood that to maintain his empire, he needed not only money and weapons, but also political influence. The deeper he embedded himself into political circles, the more chances he had to stay afloat and avoid punishment. In 1982, Pablo Escobar decided to take his political career into his own hands and ran for the Colombian Congress. With his ambitions, his strategy was not only to continue leading his cartel, but also to enter the government. Escobar was elected as an alternate congressman. Upon infiltrating Congress, he began to dream of the presidency of Colombia. What helped him to gain such popularity among voters? Strangely enough, his charitable work. He built houses, hospitals, schools, and sports complexes. One of his most notable projects was the Barrio Pablo Escobar in Medellin, where homes were constructed for poor families. In the eyes of the people, he was not just a drug lord, but a true hero. The people began to call him the Robin Hood of Medellin, and this title helped him win the hearts of thousands of voters. But of course, it wasn't limited to just charity. Pablo launched a massive campaign of bribery. Officials, judges, and police officers, no one could resist his generosity. Almost everyone who came into conflict with Pablo faced a choice: plata o plomo, money or lead. His network of bribery penetrated government structures so deeply that he practically controlled the country. However, there were those who chose lead. One of Pablo's main opponents was the Minister of Justice, Rodrigo Lara Bonilla. Rodrigo actively fought against drug traffickers and publicly criticized Escobar, calling him the greatest threat to Colombia. In 1984, Rodrigo was eliminated on Escobar's orders. After this, the Colombian government initiated a large-scale operation against the Medellin cartel. Pablo responded with ruthless attacks, including a series of bombings throughout the country and the elimination of high-ranking officials and law representatives. He generously paid for the heads of police officers, offering a reward of $2,000 for each law enforcement officer killed. This allowed him to create an atmosphere of terror and fear among those who attempted to pursue him. According to some estimates, his organization was responsible for more than 4,000 deaths, including police, judges, and politicians who dared to oppose him. Have you ever heard of the prison La Catedral? After long battles with the authorities in 1991, Escobar agreed to surrender, but on his terms. As a result of 6 months of secret negotiations with the government, Don Pablo agreed to plead guilty and serve a 5-year prison sentence, but with a very important stipulation. He would serve his term in a prison built by himself, La Catedral. This prison was more like a luxury hotel. It had a jacuzzi, a bar, a soccer field, and even an equipped underground bunker in case of possible massive airstrikes. Additionally, the inmate personally chose his own guards. Escobar continued to manage his business right from prison, holding meetings and arranging parties. When these facts became public knowledge through journalists, everyone realized that things had gone too far. However, in 1992, Escobar was determined that he had served enough time and quietly escaped. After this, the hunt for him lasted 17 months, until December 2nd, 1993, when Pablo Escobar was killed. At the very beginning of the video, we mentioned the Rothschild family. Now, let's return to the topic of elites, examining how influential clubs have become a new form of behind-the-scenes power. Have you ever heard of the Bilderberg Group? It is one of the most mysterious and elite organizations in the world. Imagine a secret society where only the most influential people on the planet are invited. Politicians, businessmen, scientists, and even some members of royal families. Every spring, these titans gather at closed meetings in luxurious hotels around the world to discuss the future of humanity. But do these people really control the world? The founding of the Bilderberg Group was hardly intended to create a sort of world government. A group of influential individuals, lobbying for the interests of NATO and the United States, needed to gather in a closed setting to discuss issues important to Western civilization. The first conference of the club took place in the year 1954 at the Hotel de Bilderberg in the Netherlands, where, at the invitation of the Dutch royal court, 70 people from 12 countries assembled. Today, more than 130 people attend the Bilderberg meetings annually, including permanent members of the club. It is known that among them are representatives of the Rockefeller and Rothschild dynasties, former and current prime ministers of some European countries, royalty from the United Kingdom, Spain, and the Netherlands, as well as former presidents of the World Bank and corporations. NATO generals, as well as US presidents and secretaries of state, frequently attend. Persistent rumors circulated that during the 2008 US presidential race, it was at the Bilderberg meeting that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton agreed to work together. Conspiracy theorists also attribute the group influence over the resignations of Richard Nixon and Margaret Thatcher, planning interventions in the Yugoslav conflict and the American invasion of Iraq. Thus, the Bilderberg Group remains an enigmatic and influential organization, continuing to gather the most powerful people on the planet. What do they do behind closed doors? This might remain a mystery forever, but one thing is clear. The influence of this group on the world economy and politics is enormous. And while mentions of mysterious organizations are most often perceived as conspiracy theories, the influence of the media on society can be assessed by everyone. It turns out that television and news programs can do much more than simply entertain and inform. They can indeed shape our consciousness and even control our thoughts. One of the most interesting examples is Operation Mockingbird, conducted by the CIA during the Cold War. As part of this operation, the CIA actively influenced the media in the United States, using its agents and purchasing the services of journalists to spread certain viewpoints. Newspapers, radio, and television became tools of influence, capable of shaping public opinion in the interest of intelligence services. How has information manipulation changed over time? Whereas the CIA used to control the media from within, today media manipulations swiftly take over the internet. Fake news is a powerful tool of manipulation. For example, the Pizzagate incident in 2016. The rumor, which spread through social media, claimed that several high-ranking politicians were involved in a child trafficking network and that it was allegedly linked to a pizzeria in Washington. Although all of this was later proven to be false, the news caused a significant uproar and even led to an armed attack on this pizzeria. The power of such news lies in its ability to provoke strong emotional reactions and shape public opinion. But how far can such manipulations go? Here is a vivid example: the United States presidential election in the year 2016. The scandal involving the company Cambridge Analytica, which gained access to the personal data of millions of Facebook users. With the help of this data, they developed entire advertising campaigns capable of manipulating voters' preferences. This case revealed how deeply modern technologies can penetrate the personal space of each of us and shape our opinions. The issue of manipulation in politics and business is not limited to just one scandal. Technological giants such as Google and Amazon play no less of a role in managing our consciousness and decisions. Have you ever wondered how Google manages to provide you with the right search results so quickly? This all-seeing eye of the internet manages information with such precision that it becomes a bit frightening. Google started as a simple search engine back in 1998, but quickly turned into a monster that controls almost all information on the internet. And here is the first curious detail. Every day, Google processes about 3.5 billion queries. Astonishing, isn't it? But that's not all. Google not only knows what you search for, but also creates your digital profile based on everything you do on the internet. Your queries, visited sites, watched videos, all of this is collected and analyzed. In the end, this allows algorithms to predict your actions and interests with such accuracy that it sometimes seems they are reading your mind. And what about Amazon? Founded by Jeff Bezos in the year 1994 as an online bookstore, this corporation now sells literally everything, from electronics to clothing and food products. And that's not all. More than 200 million people worldwide are subscribed to Amazon Prime. Additionally, Amazon owns the largest data clouds in the world, used by thousands of organizations and governments globally. Which ones exactly? For example, the governments of the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, Japan, and even the United States Department of Defense. This means that company data and even state secrets are stored on Amazon's servers. Now let's move on to even more exciting points. Google and Amazon are not just technological giants, but also powerful political players. For instance, in the year 2014, Google actively promoted net neutrality laws to ensure equal internet access for everyone. Of course, they did this to protect their interests. Google knows that a fair internet benefits them, and they're not shy about using their power to promote it. They influence legislation related to confidential data, artificial intelligence technologies, and tax reforms. Amazon plays the same game, but in an even more cunning way. In the year 2017, they announced plans to build a second headquarters and organized a genuine competition among American cities. It was a grandiose public relations campaign, as a result of which cities offered huge tax incentives and preferences to attract the giant. Ultimately, Amazon chose the city of Arlington. It is noteworthy that the selection process sparked fierce political debates and even protests. However, influence on power can manifest not only through open PR campaigns of large corporations, but also through more concealed yet equally effective mechanisms. For example, lobbying, when companies or individuals try to influence government decisions. Lobbyists are true professionals in this field. They work for companies or organizations and attempt to sway politicians towards decisions favorable to them. For instance, if a company wants to ensure that a new law does not hinder their business operations, they hire lobbyists. Imagine them as people who know how to negotiate and are familiar with every in and out of the bureaucratic machine. They know whom to talk to, which arguments to use, and how to make sure their opinion is taken into account. And of course, they are paid huge sums for this. Why is this necessary? Imagine that a law that will tighten regulations for pharmaceutical companies is about to be passed. Lobbyists from that company will try to convince politicians that this law is a bad idea, showing that such measures will lead to higher drug prices, job cuts, and a slowdown in medical development. But there is another side to the coin. In the year 2015, a scandal erupted involving the energy company ExxonMobil. It was revealed that ExxonMobil had been aware of the consequences of climate change for decades, yet continued funding lobbying against climate initiatives. They spent millions of dollars on campaigns that questioned scientific data, trying to slow down the fight against climate change. Why are situations like ExxonMobil's even possible? The issue is that lobbying and corruption often go hand in hand, like inseparable comrades. Lobbyists can legally promote the interests of companies. But when bribes and secret deals get involved, it crosses into the realm of corruption. From the secret meetings of the Bilderberg Club to the algorithms of Google and Amazon, from the influence of the Rothschilds on financial empires to the manipulation of public opinion through fake news, all this reminds us of a simple truth. The world is not only governed by presidents and ministers. Behind the scenes of official events are those who hold information, money, and influence. And who knows, perhaps right now, while you are watching this video behind closed doors somewhere, a future is being decided that will affect the lives of billions of people.